and you would try to craft your interval sessions around what that's going to look like. Kind of deeper into it, what would a typical training week look like? I usually have athletes do 2 interval sessions per week spread out, because you want to do your interval sessions when you're fresh so that they can be high quality. So like, let's say, and I usually have athletes take 2 rest days or recovery ride days per week.
I gotta say, I'm a bit surprised that it's all you. I thought at least in something you got someone helping you.
I mean, I've thought about it. I think the first step obviously would be to hire an editor. I'm a little bit concerned that, you know, they wouldn't edit it. I'm sure that if I hired an editor, they would know what they're doing and they would be very good at editing videos, but I feel like the videos have a certain style to them and I just wouldn't want them to lose that.
Yeah. You sound very much like the Tyler Pierce, the vegan cyclist. Ако нешто е повеќе од јасно од сите овие епизоди на нашиот подкаст, зборот перформанс може да има најразлични дефиниции и сваќања, ама едно е заедничко за сите, дека никој никогаш не направил ништо сам. И како знак на поддршка, проверете ги линковите во описот што е доле под видеото во делот Пријатели на подкастот. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. And
yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. We immediately have some fan questions, so we'll start with those and then we'll move on to my own.
Let's do it. Yep.
Right. So we have David, who's asking about your work and training dynamics. Now, I personally know that you're also coaching and, of course, with the YouTube and all of that, but I know what he's asking, and it's more of a, you know, quotes, a normal, typical job. So was there ever a time in your life when you had to like work a normal job and also worry about training?
Sure. Yeah. So I've never had a job that hasn't had something to do with cycling. In high school, I worked in a bike shop, and then my job immediately after college was working at CTS as a cycling coach. And then when I started the YouTube channel, I was able to get enough clients through the YouTube channel that I didn't really need CTS, and I broke off on my own. And my income now is, I would say, there's kind of 3 sources of income. One is being a professional bike racer, and sponsors pay me to race bikes, and every once in a while I do well at a bike race and I get some prize money too, and that's a source of income. And then there's the coaching, which is a source of income, and then YouTube actually pays creators for making videos. Every time you see one of those ads that pops up before a YouTube video,
of course, yeah,
YouTube is actually splitting that ad money with the creator, so there's a little bit of income that comes from that as well. So I think going back to the question, was the question, how do I balance, you know, training with
work and
with
training?
work?
Yeah.
Well,
I guess you have it pretty nicely set up, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess how I do it is I'll be honest, training takes priority over any other work for me, and I know that other people don't have that luxury, and they don't have the luxury of creating their own schedule for work. Some people do, some people don't, but I will make sure that I get in my training, that I'm getting in my training for the day before I'm doing any other work. And it usually works out fine. I mean, there's usually enough time in the day. I do wish that I could get out videos at a quicker rate, and it gets hard to get out videos at a quick rate when I'm traveling for racing so much. But yeah, if I've got, I mean, just as an example, like let's say I'm trying to finish up a video, but I've also got a 6-hour ride to do. I'm gonna do the 6-hour ride, and then worry about finishing up the video.
Like a true athlete. I like that. That's a good attitude. I like that. Just finish your priorities first, and then worry about the rest. That's a good way to go. We have Boyan asking about the the periods of time off the bike, and he's asking specifically before seasons, I guess. So how long is your complete time off the bike before you start training base? And do you do some cross training in that period? What would that be?
Yeah. So after the last race of the year, this has been my typical off season for, I don't know, the past 5 or 6 years. And this can change depending on what your race schedule looks like, or what your training goals are, or what your season look like. This is not, what I'm about to tell you what my off season looks like is not necessarily the exact prescription that everyone should follow, but I would say it's probably something that a lot of people would be successful with. After the last race of the season, I take 2 weeks completely off the bike, and in that 2 weeks, I don't do any physical activity. I don't run, I don't lift, I go a little stir crazy and I start walking around the neighborhood, but but that's just because I'm starved for physical activity, because there's so much physical activity in my life on a normal basis. It's actually, it's a little bit it's relieving at first. The first 3 to 4 days, it's relieving to not have to train, but after that, I just want to train so badly.
It gets too stressful.
Yeah. So that's 2 weeks completely off the bike and no other physical activity. And then after that 2 weeks there's about, if I've got enough time, there's about a 2-month period before I start base training. After that 2 weeks, and I call that the off season. Some people call it there are different terms for what that is.
2 months before you start base training, and in those 2 months is just whatever goes.
So it's a little bit whatever goes. I would say on the bike it's whatever goes, and the volume is low and the intensity is low. Yeah, the structure on the bike, there's not a lot of structure during this period. And I actually think it's good to have a time of the year that's not structured. But what is structured is me getting back in the gym. And and that's part of why the volume and the intensity needs to be low during this time. It's because at this point, because I've had a busy race season, I probably haven't been in the gym for a while. I mean, for example, this year, I hadn't been in the gym since, I think, May. So quite a while. Getting back in the gym, I'm very sore. It's hard to do anything on the bike, and I'm gradually increasing the weight and increasing, the number of sets I'm doing. And each gym workout is progressively harder than the next one, which means that I'm constantly sore. And doing anything hard on the bike is very challenging when you're doing that. So while it's not necessarily a period of time to just slack off, I would say. You can have fun on the bike, but I really encourage people, if they're gonna do weightlifting, to improve their cycling performance. And I have probably 4 or 5 videos on this point about weightlifting and how it improves cycling performance. It's probably the topic I've talked about the most on my channel. If you're gonna do it, you need to do it in kind of an off season. If you just start weightlifting in the middle of your season, when your intensity is high and your volume is high and you're trying to race, it's not going to work out well for you.
Yeah, it might even hurt you. Yeah, it's I will try to avoid questions that you've actually addressed in your videos a lot and very helpfully.
Sure.
But in the same time, you also already answered part of the next question, which is how much weight training helps you. And we'll just skip over that because you already mentioned it. It helps a lot. There's videos on that. There's research on that. If you want to add something extra, but feel free.
I don't think I need to add anything extra, but if you want to know the answer to that question, I've got probably, like I said, 4 or 5 videos on it on my channel. Just search Dylan Johnson weightlifting, and there's plenty of information.
That's right. And that goes for Antonio. That was our last question. Antonio, thanks for everybody else for these questions. It kind of adds some variety in my podcast. Oh, no, I have one more. And this is from my wife, who, by the way, has zero interest in cycling. She wants to know, what do you do for fun, and cycling doesn't count?
What do I do for fun and cycling doesn't count? Um, I'm gonna be honest. Most of my time is spent either coaching, working on YouTube videos, or cycling. And if I'm not doing one of those three things, I'm probably watching Netflix with my girlfriend.
Okay, well, then that's fun.
Sure.
Let's say that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much for this. That's with the fan questions. Now to my own more specific, and these questions, just to give you kind of a backstory, and the whole reason for me doing the podcast is my own curiosity of hearing other people's experiences and maybe finding out details, purely for my own obsession with a lot of these topics. And you cover so many of the topics that I actually am very curious about, and I have watched a lot of your videos. Before we begin in the nitty-gritty, I always want to hear the beginnings of a athletic career in people. And especially I would ask you is, if you remember that specific time, a period or a moment when you kind of knew that you fell in love with the sport.
Sure.
When was that? What was that?
Sure. I'll be honest, I don't remember. I don't know if there was like a light bulb moment where I said, I know that I want to be a professional cyclist, but I would say I started cycling when I was 12. My dad started taking me mountain biking, and I started racing when I was 14, mountain bike racing. And I would say if I did my first race at 14 years old, I knew by 15 years old that I wanted to be a professional cyclist. It didn't take long. So yeah, I mean, I think that I have a very obsessive personality, and I would say that was definitely true in my teenage years, maybe even more so. And I was completely obsessed with cycling throughout high school.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. So I get a feeling that once that period passed, like 14 to 15, it was like, okay, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Cool.
100%.
That's that mindset that usually it's a normal mindset for a for a high performer, I guess. If you choose something, you just go all in.
I think that a lot of elite athletes probably have obsessive personalities, because it takes an obsessive. Let's just take cycling for example. Professional cyclists have to train on their bike for 20 to 30 hours per week. You have, in order to spend 20 to 30 hours per week doing something like that, you have to be obsessed with it.
I know. Very true.
Yeah.
Literally obsessed. Yeah. Okay, so Jukebox cycling. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Jukebox.
Jukebox. I really tried to understand. I really tried to understand. I researched, I opened, I read websites. I really tried to understand what it is exactly, what is it all about, but I'm afraid I couldn't satisfy my curiosity enough. So please, can you explain to me what it is?
Oh man, that's funny. There was a cycling meme page that had a meme about the Jukebox. I think it was like some guy talking to another guy, and the one guy asked, are you on a team, or are you a privateer? Right? Because if you're on a team, then your team handles all your sponsorship. If you're a privateer, you handle all your sponsorship. And the guy said, neither. I'm on Jukebox cycling. which is it, I thought it was super funny. I tagged Jukebox in it. Hopefully they thought it was funny too. So Jukebox calls itself a team, and Jukebox, for people who don't know, is a sticker company.
Okay.
And they also do other merch too. They make hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, that sort of thing. And the team is interesting. It's called Jukebox Cycling Team, but I would call it more of a collection of privateers.
Okay.
And the only sponsor that everyone on the team has in common is Jukebox. A lot of us are sponsored by Factor, but not all of us. A lot of us are sponsored by Silka, but not all of us. So we have a lot of sponsors in common, but it's not like everybody's on the same helmet and everybody's got the same kit all our kits look slightly different. They all have Jukebox, and that's the main logo, but they're all slightly different. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's kind of a collection of privateers is what I would call it.
Right. So a group of privateers that kind of agreed to have this one sponsor together, and then we'll all take care of our own other sponsors. So in that regard, what would you say is your role in it?
Well, I think that it's just like as far as what my role in Jukebox is it's just like as if I was on a cycling team. I'm a racer, and my role is to get good results. Another question that came up earlier this year was, are the Jukebox riders going to work together and use team tactics to try to do well in races? Our answer before any racing happened was we're probably not going to do that. And now that the season is over, I can say that not once did we do any team tactics together. There's no team tactics the entire year. Everybody just raced their own race. So.
Okay. So it is a contract thing. It's a sponsorship contract thing, which in one way one could understand that you can call yourself a pro because of that, because you have a contract with a sponsor and that makes you a professional. So at least in that way, well, actually, are you getting paid, or the deal is in some other form?
Yeah, I get paid. I get paid by my sponsors.
Okay, so just a normal sponsorship. Okay, right. I think I understand it better now. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's, it's interesting too. It's in cycling, and I'm sure it's this way in other sports too. There's not pro versus amateur is not a black and white distinction. There's a gray area between being an amateur and being a pro. It's like, okay, there's the guy that gets 50% off his bikes. Is that guy a pro? Well, probably not. But then there's the guy that gets free bikes. Is that guy a pro? I don't know. There's the guy that gets free bikes and some money for travel, but he's not really paying his bills with it. It's like there's a gray area of here's the person that is absolutely not making any money whatsoever off of cycling, and here's the person that is making, I don't know, like all the way up to Peter Sagan, who's making millions of dollars, right? So
I think that's well known, and the only unknown thing in this whole picture was the Jukebox cycling thing, but I think I get it now, and thanks for clarifying it a bit. Okay, getting a bit more technical. You mentioned it, and I know of it, that you were a CTS coach for some time. I actually have spent a year with CTS. Shout out to Noah Nivinsky. I don't know if you guys know each other.
Oh, dude, we totally know each other. We worked together when I was back at CTS. Honestly, when I started making my my YouTube videos, he was like, of the people that I worked with at CTS, he was probably the biggest fan of the YouTube channel. So
awesome. So yeah, I did actually spend a year with him preparing for a race. It was my first time actually having that kind of a collaboration with a more professional coach, let's say. So I know of you from those years. But you also mentioned, and I noticed it a couple of years ago, that you went solo. Let's say you went away from CTS, and you are like your own. You have your own coaching practice now outside of CTS.
Mm-hmm.
What is the biggest thing you learned while you were with CTS in this regard, of course, in the coaching realm, in whatever skills and experiences you gained to help you further with your coaching? What was the biggest thing that you got from CTS?
Sure. Yeah, so I graduated college with an exercise science degree, which I would say taught me a lot about the physiology of coaching. But then there's kind of the more nitty gritty of coaching. I already kind of knew how Training Peaks worked, which is the what we use to prescribe
the software,
training, but software that we use to prescribe training. But then there's just kind of things like workflow, and I think probably communicating with people was a big thing too, because I think there's probably a lot of people like this that maybe they're brilliant coaches, but part of being a coach is communicating with people.
Of course.
And maybe they're not so good at that part of it. And maybe that kind of person can work well with certain types of people, but not other types of people. And that whole process, I remember the training process, and it was very much kind of learn as you go and learn on the job. And I, anytime I had questions about how to, how to get people to do their training, and how to, what's the best way to do a consultation call and all of that. And then I also had questions about, how do I set up this training week? What does the periodization look like? Some of that I had better knowledge of, because it was stuff that I was already interested in before I had even gotten the job. But yeah, I mean, I think that had I started my own company immediately after college, I just don't think I would have been ready for it.
I see. So it kind of gave you like practice on the actual work. Sure. I think I get it. Yeah. And so now, how is your coaching approach different now that you're not with CTS? Is there anything different? Maybe something that, okay, you've gathered some experiences from CTS, but now you can have your own imprint into some certain specifics. How is it different now that you're not with them?
Sure. So, I mean, not that my coaching wasn't like this when I was at CTS, but I would say that the defining characteristic of my brand now is that it's science-based coaching, meaning that what informs my coaching decisions is what the research says. So, I mean, as you can see in my videos, I very much follow the research, and I'm trying to see what where the balance of evidence lies on all these different coaching topics, and that's kind of what I use to inform my coaching decisions. And that being said, there's not an answer to every single coaching question in the literature currently. We're working on it. It's a constant work in progress. And that means that for some aspects of training and coaching, you need to make some educated guesses, I would say. So of course I do a little bit of that too, but whenever possible, I'm looking to what the research says. And I'm not saying that CTS doesn't do that, but that's not a defining characteristic of their brand like it is with my coaching.
And it helps that you're actually training yourself. So whatever little information that you don't have specific scientific research to read about, you have your own years of experience that you can kind of draw from and maybe try out on yourself and intuitively try to decide what would be the best to suggest to your athletes, which I always appreciate when the coach is also the practitioner of that, whatever he's coaching. And how much does that play a role in your approach? And I'm talking about that intuitive aspect of training, those things that, as you yourself said, sometimes there's just not enough literature, but you still got to train. So something leads you into some kind of decisions. How much are you intuitive about these things?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what you're. I guess when the literature falls short, usually what I'm falling on after that is my experience, right? So at this point, I've been, let's say, I did my first race when I was 14 years old, and I'm 27 now. So what is that? That is 13 years of race experience. I, you know, I've learned a lot. I feel like I learn something every year. I feel like I learn something every race. About every year I'm making tweaks to my training. You know, sometimes I'm like, oh, I should do a little bit more volume, or I should do a little bit more intensity, or a little less intensity, a little more volume. Maybe I should structure it this way. Maybe I should structure it that way. Change this up, change that up. I'm constantly making tweaks to my own training, and I learn what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, when the literature falls short, I'm kind of falling back on that to inform further coaching decisions, I would say.
Cool. One thing that always interested with coaching, with coaches, is how many athletes they can work with until they start feeling it's too much, it's too many. They're losing the quality that they should and can give to athletes. And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, for you personally, have you found that sweet spot of how many are you willing to take on before you start feeling it, you know, neither you nor your athletes are getting the best of it because there's just too many of them?
Sure. Well, I'm probably not the best person to ask about this because I actually only coach 4 athletes, or 5, depending on.
Is that by choice?
It is by choice. Yeah. I mean, I could, if I wanted to, the number of people who email me every week to be coached by me, if I wanted to, I could, I don't know, probably coach 150 people or more. But
so that's your sweet spot then. You kind of fell to that number as.
Yeah, so I think the most athletes I've ever coached was when I was at CTS. Towards the end, I think I had as high as 25. And I thought that 25 was manageable, but probably much more than that, and it wouldn't have been. Part of the reason why my number is so low right now is because I have so many. I've got so much more on my plate. I've got training to do. I've got YouTube to do. I've got other podcasts to do. I've got 2 of my own podcasts that I do every week. There's just a lot more things to do other than just coaching. And actually, that's the reason why me and Drew Dillman, who's my business partner, we started Ignition Coach Co., which is we're not coaches in Ignition, but we've hired coaches to work for us.
Okay.
And when somebody comes to me and they say, you know, I want coaching, my answer is I can't personally coach you, but I do have coaches working for me that I can
go to Ignition.
Right. And we train these coaches, and you know, I talk about following an evidence-based model, and we kind of have these continuing educations where we talk about the research and all of that. So I have a lot of confidence in the coaches that we have on board, and I think that that anybody, people coming to me who are looking to bump up their training by working with me, I have confidence that they're going to see similar results by working with one of these coaches.
Yeah, even if like they find themselves in a situation where they're not quite so sure, I'm sure you guys constantly communicate, and eventually they'll get your feedback that's going to go to the athlete as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, any communication is constantly open with these coaches. If they have a question, they can reach out anytime. Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to hide. The next question is basically my scenario. So we're going to take a practical example. Say a cyclist comes to you, and he's a experienced amateur in his late 30s, and he has enough spare time to invest that they tell you they have 20 plus hours a week just to spend riding a bike.
Is that how much time you have to ride per week?
That's how much I decided to have for about a year. I kind of limited my other engagements consciously just to try out a full year of almost pro of riding. I had this, and so the example continues. And so let's say this athlete, 10 months from now, they want to actually ride a pretty competitive Gran Fondo. It's about a 100-mile long race, very competitive, so much so that former pro riders go to that race. And so 10 months out, what would roughly their training plan look like?
Sure. So I'll start with the macro, kind of what the overview looks like, and then we'll go deeper into the details of a training week. So I would probably have you do a 2-month off season where you are getting in the gym and you're working on your strength. And what you're doing on the bike is less important, but it wouldn't be 20 hours per week. It'd probably be more around 10 hours per week. The volume and intensity are going to be lower to make way for the gym work.
Cool.
Then we get to the base season. The base season is probably going to be 3 months. And during that period of time, the gym work is going to taper a little bit, but we're still going to be maintaining gym work. And we're really going to be bumping up the volume of your training. And just sprinkling in intensity a little bit, but intensity is not going to be the main focus of the training during this
How little sprinkling?
Probably 1 day a week of intensity.
Okay.
And the intensity that we're doing shouldn't be incredibly taxing, because we still want volume to be the primary focus of this time period. So what you're training for is do you know how long this Gran Fondo is going to take time-wise?
Well, I already wrote it, and I wrote it 4 hours, and the winners were like 10 or 15 minutes ahead. That was another group. So let's say 3:45 to 4 hours.
Gotcha. Okay.
It is quite fast. Like.
Right.
It's fast, it's competitive, there's thousands of riders, and there's former pros.
Sure. So the reason I ask is because, like, let's take two opposite ends of the spectrum. If you were training for crits, like a 1 hour crit, we would probably, during the build period, which is going to be the next 2 to 3 months, we would probably lower the volume and increase the intensity quite substantially. If we were training for a 7 to 10 hour, like ultra endurance style race, we would keep the volume the same and raise the intensity a little bit. But obviously, if we're keeping the volume the same, we can't raise the intensity as much as if we dropped the volume.
Of course.
Right? There's got to be some give and take there. I think with a 4-hour event, we would probably do something in the middle where the intensity is dropping a little, or the volume is dropping a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, we're still going to keep relatively high volume, and the intensity is going to come up. And I would probably also ask you about what are the specific demands of this particular event, and we would try to craft your craft your interval sessions around what that's going to look like.
I see.
And then when we get kind of deeper into it, what would a typical training week look like? Let's say during that build period, I usually have athletes do 2 interval sessions per week, and I want them spread out, because you want to do your interval sessions when you're fresh, so that they can be high quality. So like, let's say, and I usually have athletes take 2 rest days or recovery ride days per week.
Yeah.
And that's kind of up to them, which they prefer to do. Some people feel better after doing a recovery ride. Some people feel better after taking a complete rest day. So let's say that Monday and Friday are your rest days. We'd probably have you do those interval sessions on Tuesday and Saturday then. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday would be endurance rides. And hopefully one of those endurance rides would be a long ride. You know, maybe that Sunday session would be a long ride.
Cool.
So that's kind of a
yeah,
I don't know, what a 5-minute overview.
Yeah, that brought us to like 5 to 3 months out.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got to start thinking about.
I would say you can actually. So you said we've got 10 months to train for this. I would say there's completely such thing as starting too early. And what'll happen is people get so gung-ho to train after they've had a little bit of a break and a little bit of an off season. And let's say they don't need a peak until July, and they're already doing full-on base training in October. And I would people are different, but I would suspect that this rider is going to be burnt out before they actually get to their July race. I've seen it happen too many times. It has happened to me many times. There's such a thing as starting too early.
You just motivated 2 guys so much to do this experiment again. Me and so of course I wasn't hiding anything. This was me last year. And I completely understand what you're saying with starting too early, because I was like that. I was thinking, well, okay, I'm not a racer. I'm not going to race 10, 15, 20 races. It's just that one. It's nice. It's nice to me to go and be competitive at that race. And for me, competitive was just to not lose whatever the huge lead group is going to be. And when we're talking maybe 100 riders just in the lead group.
Mm-hmm.
And so me and a friend of mine actually did that. We just trained almost a year ahead. But luckily, we took it very easy. Our base probably lasted, I don't know, 6 months. Just zone 1, zone 2 riding. But now that that's passed, and as I said in the beginning, I'm not really riding that much. And I was thinking, well, should I start? Should we do this race again? You saying this now gives us so much freedom to actually wait a few more weeks, have the holiday season pass, and then we can start. Because you're right, it's a midsummer race.
Sure.
So that's about 6 months to 7. Right enough time to start again. So thank you for that.
I usually start my base training in January.
Awesome. So, awesome. Yeah. And I love going to the gym. I love all the core workouts, the legs, the squats, the deadlifts, everything. Okay, awesome. Moving on to actually another thing. You know, all this talk now with the polarized training method, the pyramid training method, and the increasingly more focus being given on the lower zones of training and how important zone 2 training is. So given that, and I know everything is individual, but on general, gathering from your videos, am I guessing right? You're usually taking the polarized training method with
Yeah, I would say either polarized or pyramidal.
Right.
One of those two. Yeah.
So in these methods, where obviously knowing those easy zones are probably even more important than FTP, what testing protocol do you usually recommend for athletes for the lower zones? How do you find out the zone 2?
Sure. So this is a great question, and so usually what I'll have people do is I'll just tell them to stick to a percentage of their FTP, and if we're talking about zone 2, that's usually between 55% of their FTP and 75% of their FTP. And I say and it could be higher than 75%, but I say 75% to be on the safe side because I don't want them going over. But I actually just got a blood lactate meter, and I plan to experiment with it on myself. And if I like the results of using it, I want to make a video about it at some point, if there's enough to talk about. So having the blood lactate meter is kind of a way of ensuring that you are in fact in zone 2. And you see, so if we're talking about the 3-zone model, which is what polarized uses, so zone 2 there is actually the spot where you don't want to be if you're trying to do a
at the end of zone 2 you're actually gone in the 3rd zone.
So polarized is like 80% is zone 1, and then 20% is zone 3, and that's why it's polarized. Pyramidal's a little bit different. Pyramidal's 80-ish% zone 1, let's say 15% zone 2 and 5% zone 3, and it's like a pyramid. So, but what separates those 3 zones? Well, what separates zone 1 from zone 2 is the first lactate turn point where your blood lactate levels start to rise, and then what separates zone 2 from zone 3 is when your lactate levels spike.
Correct.
And that's your FTP. So I want to use the blood lactate monitor to double check that I've actually got my zone 2 correct, and there will probably be a video about that in the future.
Awesome. While you do that, I'm sure you've also heard about the nose breathing method.
I have. And talking is a big one too. So if you can have a conversation, you're probably in zone 2. If you can't, then you're probably not.
For us here, getting to lactate meters and like very lab specific type of testing is quite difficult to get. So I actually just intuitively use the nose breathing method in just figuring out, okay, this is pretty easy if I'm still able to breathe through my nose. And like when the urge gets too difficult and you have to use your mouth to breathe, then you're definitely out of zone 2 in like a 5-zone setup. So if I could ask for a favor, and I'm sure with your scientific mind always kind of looking for those answers, any chance while you do your testing with lactate to try to measure the nose breathing technique and see how close these can actually find out zones?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely test that. I'd see if when I get out of my supposed zone 2, if I can still breathe through my nose or not.
But do you actually use that just from time to time, like in riding or training or anything, like really focus on completely shutting your mouth and just using your nose and being aware of like those urges? Are you using those kind of awareness moments in your training?
I have done that. I wouldn't say that I do that every ride or even even very frequently at this point. Most of the time, I'm looking at a combination of my heart rate and my power
Okay.
to make sure that I'm in zone two. But I think that you could probably, I think using a combination of all three is probably the best way to do it. You know, make sure that you can still breathe out of your nose, make sure your heart rate is in the right zone, make sure your power is in the right zone. If all three of those are lining up, chances are you're in zone two.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna wait to I'm gonna wait for your video just to find out how close did my method actually get me with in line with the scientific stuff. About your cycling, specific cycling career, the racing side of it, I'm afraid I'm not that much familiar with like your background, aside from recent years when I got the impression you put a bit more focus on gravel racing. I don't have much information of your cycling racing career before that. And how did it come that you switched focus more to gravel?
Yeah, sure. So as I already said, the first racing that I did was
it was mountain
cross country mountain bike racing. And I think that it was at the age of 15 that I did my first 100-mile mountain bike race. And it was something that I trained all summer for, and it was a race that a lot of people in my local area do. And so that was, and I think probably at the time I was the youngest person to complete that race, I would think. Since then, a younger person has completed the race, but so yeah, I when I did that race, I actually started to really fall in love with ultra endurance racing, and there was a whole series of ultra endurance mountain bike races called the NUE series, National Ultra Endurance Series, and they were just 100-mile mountain bike races all around the country. And for a while, that was my main focus, and I actually won that series 3 times.
Nice.
I was the youngest winner of the series at 21 years old. That was the first time I won it, and then I won it 2 times after that. That series has been kind of dying out in recent years, and it's unfortunate because it's a great series. But around 2018 to 2019-ish is when gravel just started gaining more and more traction. I did my first gravel race, I believe, in 2018, and also in 2018 I did Unbound for the first time. And the thing I loved about gravel is, I mean, gravel could have easily just been short road races on dirt, right? Like a 30-mile, 40-mile race, but on gravel. But at least in the US, gravel has really embraced long distance racing.
The ultra,
every major gravel race in the US is over 100 miles, and a lot of them are 150. Unbound is 200. I mean, they are very long races, and that's already the duration of racing that I was used to and that I was doing anyway. I mean, these 100-mile mountain bike races take 6 to 8 hours to complete for the winners. And, 150-mile gravel race is also, 6 to 8 hours. So I would say that I already was used to that duration of racing, and probably just the thing that I needed to pick up was that gravel racing was a little bit more tactical than mountain bike racing.
I see. I'm not hearing much about like your normal road cycling racing.
Yeah, I mean, I've done road races before. I've made I got up to a Cat 3 on the road as a junior before I just decided I didn't want to do much road racing. And I've done some training road races since, but yeah, I was much more of a mountain bike racer than I was a road racer.
Okay. So in that term, in that regard, your plans for the future, like midterm, short term,
Mhm.
next season, next 5 seasons? Is it how committed are you to purely gravel racing, or maybe open to some other disciplines?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I'll have to see where gravel goes, like how involved the UCI gets and where US gravel goes. Right now, I think that if you're trying to make money as a domestic pro cyclist in the US, you should be racing gravel. That's just where the money's at right now.
Is that what's
But
gonna lead your decision?
I wouldn't say will lead my decision because I don't need to rely on bike racing to make money. I make money off of YouTube and I
Right,
make money off of
right,
coaching. So
right.
I don't necessarily need to make, and I do make money off of bike racing, but I don't need bike racing to pay my bills, if that makes sense. I'll but I just like doing gravel races. So I probably what I'll do is stay focused on gravel and do the occasional mountain bike races.
Hmm.
I would say, like last year, probably 80% of the races I did were gravel and 20% were mountain bike, and I like that ratio, and I could see me doing something similar to that for the next 5 years.
Cool. YouTubing.
Mm-hmm.
That's I've just started like this year, and it takes a lot of time. And with your
It does, yeah.
coaching and training, do you do all your YouTube stuff alone? Do you
Mm-hmm.
have people helping with editing, with anything? Like it can be a almost a full-time job.
100%, yeah. I think there are probably some people who don't even realize how much work being a YouTuber is, and it can be easy to look at some of these YouTubers that look like they're just messing around and having a fun time on camera, and it's like, how hard could that be? But it is a lot of work.
It is.
Um, yeah, I don't have an editor. I don't really have anyone helping me do anything. I make the thumbnails, I edit the videos, I write the script, I do the
It's
filming.
all you.
Occasionally, I will hire a videographer to film the B-roll. So,
Aha.
like when you're watching my videos and I'm talking about, I don't know, some cadence or whatever, and you see a shot of me riding. That's obviously, I didn't shoot myself
Okay.
riding.
Yeah.
Somebody else shot that. But yeah, other than that, it's all me.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you need somebody to help with that extra footage when you're not the
Mhm.
one holding the camera. But I gotta say, I'm a bit surprised that it's all you. I thought at least in something you got someone helping you, but that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about it. I think the first step obviously would be to hire an editor. I'm I'm a little bit concerned that they wouldn't edit it in the way in not I'm sure that if I hired an editor, they would know what they're doing and they would be very good at editing videos, but I feel like the videos have a certain style to them and I just wouldn't want them to lose that.
Yeah,
That's it.
you sound very much like the Tyler Pierce, the vegan cyclist.
Is that what he said?
He well, he said almost exactly that. Even though
Hmm.
he tried, I think once or twice on the impossible routes, he delegated that job to an actual editing company, and now he's back to editing himself. He gave almost the same answer, which I can understand. Once you have your own little personal touches in the edits, I can understand that. Do you
Yeah.
follow him? Do you watch his
I
videos?
do, yeah, and we're friends. I mean, anytime that we see each other at a race or an event, we say hi and we catch up. And I was following him before I made my YouTube channel, and I we've talked about the ins and outs of YouTubing, and yeah, I'm a fan of Tyler.
His latest impossible route, I think, goes out tonight or tomorrow. The one
Mhm.
that they rode in Europe.
Yeah, and by the way, he does the impossible route with Jeremiah Bishop.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Bishop is from the same area that I grew up. We're both from Virginia, and I've been racing Jeremiah since I was a junior. He was he was way faster than me when I was a junior, because that was like the peak of his pro career, and he's been slowing down and I've been speeding up. But yeah, I mean, I know, like, I know Jeremiah better than I know Tyler, and so the fact that they're collaborating on that project is super cool.
Is there in any way that your YouTubing is actually helping your cycling, but like in a not financially, not, I don't know, I'm finding it difficult to frame the question, but I don't know whether it's in the focus or the commitment or something that's not so obvious. I mean,
Sure.
the obvious thing is when you prepare a video for a topic that you've researched. Obviously, you're going to read a lot of materials, and that's something that will help your training, obviously. But what, something that's not so obvious that YouTubing has actually helped your writing? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I think I know what you're saying, and I think that you're right, that the obvious answer is that if I'm kind of forcing myself to do all this research to make a YouTube video about these various topics, then obviously I'm more knowledgeable about these topics, and that'll help me with my own racing, and I think that's the case. But I think, you know, maybe beyond that, it's you know, it's kind of taught me a little bit of discipline, to stay on top of, not that I didn't have discipline before. I mean, I've always been disciplined about my training, but it's just another thing to be disciplined about. And there could be that. I will say that probably, you know, if we're asking the question, does making YouTube videos make
you faster
or slower? I don't know about that. I mean, I think if there's a reason why pro cyclists, the only thing they do is ride their bike. They go back and sit on the couch and don't do anything else. They're just recovering. I think that I think that any other extra life stressors that you're adding to your life is probably taking away from your cycling performance, if for no other reason than your recovery between sessions is being hindered a little bit. So, and I'm not saying that YouTube is a huge stressor in my life. I don't stress about getting videos out. I just make videos because I like making videos. And if it takes me 2 to 3 weeks between videos, then it takes me 2 to 3 weeks. I don't stress about it, but it's another thing for me to do, and it's another thing for me to think about. So,
as long as you love doing it, we love consuming it, so it's cool. I guess the question would make more sense for coaching. You know that thing when, if you want to see if you understood something, try teaching it to another.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what you're doing when you're researching the topics. You're gonna read and read, but then you're forcing yourself to tell it to somebody else. That act alone is kind of impressing the whole thing deeper into your knowledge. And 100%. I guess it makes much more sense for coaching, that it's really helping your coaching doing actually YouTube videos.
I would definitely say that's the case. I would say the thing about putting it on YouTube, you can do your own research on your own with no stakes involved. You just look it up and you're like, okay, that makes sense. But when you put it out to the world, put it out to the public, you don't want to mess up. You don't want to say the wrong
God, the hate.
You don't want to say the wrong thing, and you want to be accurate in what you're saying. So you make sure you have it right before you put it into that script and say it on camera, and then upload it to YouTube. So yeah, I mean, I've researched these topics before the YouTube channel to try to get to the bottom of some of these topics, but when you are actually putting it in a video, it's another level of just double checking yourself to make sure you're on the right page. So yeah, 100%.
That moment when you need to hit publish, that's like the moments before a race. Is it almost stressful?
Yeah, I would say it was stressful when I first started. I don't think it's stressful anymore. I've gotten, when you first start putting videos out, you know, you read every single, not that I don't read I still read the comments, but I'm just saying you know, you're anticipating, you're like, oh man, is this going to get hate? Are people going to like this? Are people not going to like this? You know, what is people's reactions going to be? Are people going to be interested? Are they going to watch? Are they not going to be interested? All of this stuff. And I would say that just like with bike racing, how you get less nervous about bike races, the more experience you get and the more races you do, the more videos you put out on the internet, the less nervous you get about putting videos out on the internet. And you kind of, after a while, you're like, I mean, you know, people are gonna hate this. They're the most uncontroversial topic that you could possibly think of. There's somebody who's got a problem with it. So it's just, it is what it is.
Okay, Dylan, I don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much for joining me. I did actually find out some things that I didn't know about you, and that's mission accomplished for me. I'm gonna leave you to your day. You have Thanksgiving. Anything? What's in store for Thanksgiving for you?
Yeah, I'm just for Thanksgiving. I'm just my parents are down here in North Carolina. Just gonna have Thanksgiving with them and my girlfriend, and probably go for a bike ride as well. I always like to go for a bike ride on Thanksgiving Day, so I'm not just eating a bunch of food with absolutely no calories burned beforehand. Luckily I don't have to do any of the cooking. If I did have to do some of the cooking, then probably no one would eat it. But, yeah, that's my plans.
Awesome stuff. Well, happy Thanksgiving, and wish you all the best, man. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's fun.
Awesome. Cheers, man. Bye.